Hello, my name is Dennis, and welcome to my trailer park white trash mobile home kitchen. I really do live in a mobile home, in a trailer park, and this is my kitchen. Someone sent me a nice compliment on my YouTube videos, and she finished her comment with the question, do you ever make desserts? And yes, I do, but I know I don't make anywhere near as many as I should. Mostly I concentrate on savory main dishes. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to make a dessert. I'm calling this one Quadruple Rum Cake. There's a lot of rum in this, and I use it in 4 different ways. That's where the quadruple comes from. You'll understand that when we get into the formula, the ingredients, and the method of preparation. So let's just go right into the ingredients I'm using for making my Quadruple Rum Cake. These are the ingredients for my cake. I have just over 1/2 cup of chunked walnuts here because I need to crush these down. What I need is 1/2 cup of crushed walnuts. These are about 3 ounces or 85 grams. 1½ cups, 11 ounces, 312 grams, granulated sugar, 1/2 cup butter, which you can measure as 1 stick, 4 ounces, 113 grams. You want the butter to be soft at room temperature. I have 3 tablespoons, and then I have 1/2 cup, this is 118 milliliters of oil. You can use canola oil, corn oil, grapeseed oil, or vegetable oil. I'm using corn oil because I have it. 1 3/4 cups of flour. The original recipe didn't say whether it was sifted flour or scooped out. That's important when you're baking. Because this is a baking recipe, I'm assuming what they were using, the measure was close to sifted. I'm using 7½ ounces here, which is equivalent to 213 grams. That works in this cake formula. I've made it before, it works fine. I'm also using cake flour because I have it. You can use all-purpose flour. 1/4 cup, which is 3/4 of an ounce, 21 grams of cornstarch, 4 teaspoons baking powder, 1 teaspoon salt, 1 cup, which is about equivalent to 7 ounces or 200 grams of pudding mix. You can buy the vanilla pudding mix in a store, or you can mix up your own. I mix it up by the jar and then store it, and when I need it, I take out what I need. I put in the jar 3/4 of a cup of non-fat dry milk powder. I actually cheated there, I'll explain that. 3/4 cup of cornstarch, 1 cup of granulated white sugar, and 1 teaspoon of salt. I don't put any flavoring in there like vanilla because I can put cocoa powder in it later on and make chocolate pudding, or put butterscotch flavoring in it. The way I cheated was I didn't have any non-fat dry milk powder, so what I substituted with, I told a friend about this, she screamed at me, this is non-fat coffee creamer, the stuff you have in the office around the coffee machine. I keep this in the house because I can sometimes use this as an ingredient. It works. I made up some of that pudding with vanilla in it for a friend who has discriminating taste. He really liked the pudding. If you can get away with it and it works, do it. So again, that's 1 cup, about 7 ounces, 200 grams of this dry pudding mix, 3/4 of a cup, 175 milliliters whole milk, 4 large eggs, 3/4 cups, 175 milliliters of dark rum, and I've been smelling this while I'm standing here, and then finally 4 teaspoons of vanilla extract. So those are the ingredients I'm using for the cake. We'll get into the syrup and the other stuff later on. I set up my cutout from my Korean countertop because I'm going to be hammering here and I don't want to put dings in my wooden countertop. So there are my crushed walnuts, or my chunked walnuts. They're going to be crushed walnuts in a moment. And then I have my Whacker spoon, www.whackerspoon.com. The designer and manufacturer of these gave one to me for free. So this is my chance to use it to crush my walnuts down. You could do this in a food processor, I suppose, but I have so little to do here that I'm just going to use my Whacker spoon. Okay. And put that back in my bowl. And that's ready. What I'm going to do with this is I have my bundt pan. I sprayed this actually with non-stick spray. And I'm going to just use, and I floured it very nicely as you can see. And I'm just going to put my walnuts in the bottom and kind of swish that around a little bit. When I put my cake batter in there, those walnuts will give me a kind of a walnutty top to my cake batter, to my finished cake. I want to combine my sugar and butter here. I'm going to cream these together. This is why you want the butter to be at room temperature. It's a lot easier to do this when the butter is soft and warm rather than cold from the refrigerator. Okay, so that looks pretty good. My sugar and butter are creamed together. You want to just bring those together until they're kind of a homogeneous mixture. Now I want to add my 3 tablespoons of oil, my flour, this is my cornstarch, baking powder, and then finally the salt. And again, mix this together. I switched to my wire cutter to cut all these ingredients together. I've got more gadgets squeezed into this mobile home. So now here's my pudding mix, that dry powder. And I'm just going to cut this in until it's blended, and then my dry-ish ingredients will be ready. Now I'm ready to start combining my wet ingredients. So there's my eggs, 4 eggs, my milk, my rum that I've been breathing here, that half cup of oil, and then finally the vanilla. And I'm going to combine that with a whisk. I'm ready to combine my wet and dry ingredients here. In the meantime, well, nothing broke. That's good news. In the meantime, I have my oven heating up to 325 degrees. I'm going to blend this, and if this doesn't blend the way I like, I will move this to the stand mixer. So there's my batter from the cake mixer. I did whir that up really nicely until it was well blended. I want my spatula in case I need it. This should be thin and pourable, which it is. So you can see that pours nicely. This is not like a thick cake batter. And I just want to scrape that bowl. Good enough. My oven has come up to 325 degrees. I'm going to bake this for at least an hour. I might go longer. I want to see an internal temperature of about 195 to 205 degrees. That's the temperature at which a toothpick inserted would come out clean. I like working with a digital thermometer, so this is now ready to go into the oven. If you've been following my website blog, you know that I recently retired, and one of the occupations that I took up in retirement is learning to play the piano. So I thought while the cake is in the oven baking, I would entertain you with a musical interlude. So for my first piano recital, I would like to play for you Waltzing Matilda. I have my sheet music here, which I'm going to tape to the bottom of the camera lens so I can read it. I don't have a fancy candelabra, but well, I've got one of these. That'll be fancy enough for the way I play. Okay, Waltzing Matilda. Isn't that? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, no need of applause. Really, no need. It was nothing. A trifle. You're so gracious, but a mere trifle. I want you to see what it looks like coming out of the oven. There it is, my rum cake. This now has to cool in the pan for 10 minutes. Then I can invert it onto my cooling rack, and it needs to cool for another 20 or 30 minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to set this aside, and we're going to talk about the syrup that's going to get poured into it. These are the ingredients I'm going to be using for making the syrup that will be poured over the baked cake and allowed to soak in. I have another 1/2 cup of butter, which again is 1 stick, or about 4 ounces, 113 grams. This doesn't have to be warm because we're going to be boiling all this. This could be cold from the refrigerator. 1/2 cup, 118 milliliters of water. 3/4 cups, which is about 5½ ounces, or 156 grams of granulated sugar. 1 teaspoon salt. And 1/2 cup, or 118 milliliters of the dark rum again. I have a saucepan heating on the stove. So to make my syrup, I'm going to start by putting my butter in there. And the water. Sugar. Salt. And then stir this as it's coming up to temperature. I want to bring this up to a boil, and then reduce the heat a little bit and just let it boil lightly until it reduces in volume. You don't have to reduce it a whole lot. You just kind of want to thicken it down a little bit. So I simmered this for 5 minutes over low heat, and then I just stirred in my rum. I have in the meantime cleaned out my pan. So what I need to do here is line this up and set that on top of the pan, then invert it again. Okay. Put the cake back in there. I heated my syrup back up to the boil. Now I'm going to pour my hot syrup in there. Now comes the hard part. You have to let it sit for 8 hours. So I'm going to put plastic wrap over this Set it aside. You don't have to refrigerate this. In fact, this will be good for a week. I mean, there's so much alcohol in there from the rum. It probably kills every microorganism ever discovered by the CDC. Anyways, I'm going to cover this with plastic wrap, set it aside. This will be good. This stays good for like a week without even being refrigerated. Then tomorrow, I'll do the next step as far as making the garnish that'll go over the top. Remember, this is a quadruple rum cake. So far, I've only got double the rum in there. So this is the following day. After pouring that syrup into my cake, I let it sit for a few hours, and then I turned it over again back onto a plate because I thought maybe all the syrup might settle into the bottom. Hopefully that will distribute the syrup a little bit better. And then I want to next get into the ingredients I'm going to be making for finishing my cake. I'm going to be making a caramel rum syrup, and I'm going to be making whipped cream that'll also be flavored with a little bit of rum. So for the caramel rum sauce, I have 1/2 cup, which is about 85 grams of brown sugar. You can use dark brown sugar or golden brown. I've got golden brown. 1/2 cup, 100 grams of granulated sugar. 1/4 cup, which is about 60 milliliters of water. 2 tablespoons butter, 1/2 cup, 120 milliliters of heavy cream, and then finally 3 tablespoons of dark rum. And then for my whipped cream topping, I have 1 cup, which is about 240 milliliters of heavy cream, 1 tablespoon sugar, and then finally 1/4 cup, which is about 60 milliliters of dark rum again. So there's rum in the batter, there's rum that goes into the syrup onto the cake, then there's rum in my caramel syrup, and then there's a little bit of rum in my whipped cream. That's what makes this a quadruple rum cake. I've got a pan heating on the stove here. I'm going to put my water in there and my 2 sugars. And I'm going to be heating this up and bringing this to a boil to get this sugar to dissolve. And then I'm going to be simmering and cooking this sugar. I've got a digital thermometer at the ready. I want to heat this up to 350 degrees to make my caramel for the sauce. Okay, my temperature is just under 340 degrees. 350 degrees. I'm just stirring because that pan is hot. I want to make sure my sugar doesn't burn. I can smell this sugar cooking. So I know this is doing well. Now here comes the fun part. This is going to foam up. I'm going to put the cream in there. And then whisk, 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 rapidly, rapidly, rapidly. Get it all over the stove. So there is my caramel sauce. I want to work my butter in there now. Melt that in. That'll go in very, very quickly, as you can see. And by the way, if you have a tough time getting everything dissolved, you can always return this to the heat and bring it up to heat, and it'll dissolve any sugar that's clumped to the bottom of the whisk. You can see I've got no big clumps of sugar on that whisk. And then finally, I want to add this is off the heat, by the way, add my rum. And I did warm up the cream before I put it in there. You don't want to just dump cold cream in there. It'll just cool everything down too quickly. So the cream doesn't need to be hot, but just bring it up so that it's warm. Again, that's off the heat. My last step now is to get out my tasting spoon and taste that. It's probably a little bit warm, so I'm going to let that cool down on the metal of the spoon. Wow. Oh, that is very nice. It's got a nice caramely, rich, dark caramely flavor to it, and its tastes of the rum, that is absolutely fantastic. So I have my stand mixer set up here. I get my cream in there and start this off, of course, as you know, slow. Put my sugar in there. And as this starts to get a little bit foamy, I'll increase my speed. And let's see what I've got as far as peaks here. I want soft peaks. Because what I want this to have a slight flow to it so that it'll flow over the cake. And I've got a lot of rum here. I'm probably not going to use all of this. Maybe a tablespoon at a time. I'm just going to fold this in. This will also thin it down. Boy, almost enough rum in there. I'm probably going to use only a couple of tablespoons here. So I'm going to adjust these proportions down for the end when I show you the ingredients. For a cup of heavy cream, 2 tablespoons of the rum. And that's got a nice flow to it. That's what I want. So how I would plate this, I'm going to take a nice big thick piece. Why not? This is an 1/8 of this cake. That's a big piece of cake. Beautiful. Those dark spots are the walnuts. Gonna drizzle some of this over the top. Like so. And then finally finish up with some of my caramel syrup. Just like so. A little bit messy presentation, but there it is. My quadruple rum cake. The last step is to see how good that tastes. And there it is. That is just a beautiful quadruple rum cake. See how this tastes. Get some of that sauce. That's too good. That's too good. Okay, you gotta make this. Oh, this is so good. Excuse me, but I have to go enjoy my quadruple rum cake.